everybody, and welcome to another episode of the Winging It F1 podcast. I'm Freddie. I'm going to be hosting this today, and I'm joined by your other two hosts, Nigel Chu. Say hi, Nigel.
Hello, everyone.
And Adam Dickinson. Adam, say hello.
Hello.
Yeah, there we go.
I was hoping Nigel would say hi, Nigel, and then that'd be a cliche joke.
I'm not that clever, you see. So.
Well, I've noticed.
Well, let's hope some of your intellect just appears out of the ether for today's episode, because today is our Silverstone preview episode. Woo! Yay! Hooray! And it's also just time to say a special mention to us, because it's pretty much exactly 2 years since we started the podcast, when we were previewing the Austrian Grand Prix in 2020, back when we were all in the same places because of lockdown. Now we're just in the same places because of self-imposed lockdowns by our social lives.
Not for long.
Not for long. Not for long.
Life, really.
Yeah, we just have life. But yeah, Nigel put together a lovely little compilation video of some unique moments of our tenure, I suppose you could say. Tenure, like with the blooming Prime Minister, we're not. But yeah, so go check that out. It's on our YouTube channel, and it's just us messing around. And Nigel did a really good job with it, and you get to see some of his finest editing work, and you get to see why he did a multimedia final project for his degree.
It didn't really work for Spotify, unfortunately. So for anyone who does listen to us on just Spotify, go to YouTube right now.
Or alternative audio platform. We don't discriminate.
Yeah.
No, we do not. F1 are actually honouring his Thursday press conferences this week, isn't it? So they're honouring our birthday with the press conferences on the 30th, which is our official birthday of when the episode came out. So, if you're listening to Lewis Hamilton talk about porpoising, then just think he's doing that in our honour.
Yes, in our honour.
Yes. He may not know it, but we do, and he is.
And in true Winging It F1 style, we're now going to just move on immediately to just one little bit of news that you've probably already heard about, which is Pierre Gasly officially staying at AlphaTauri for 2023. We already knew it, but now we already know that we already know it. Now we definitely know it. Now, obviously, the conversation on this is whether it's the right move for Pierre for his career. He's just a bit stuck in the quagmire of the midfield now. There's never been any such thing as a career Toro Rosso or AlphaTauri driver. So what do you think about this position and this, well, not move, but this static scenario for Gasly, Nigel?
He couldn't really go anywhere else that would have moved him to a top team, because he's not going to go to Red Bull, he's not going to go to Ferrari, and he's not going to go to Mercedes. So that leaves Alpine if Alonso retires, Aston Martin if Vettel retires, maybe McLaren if Ricciardo leaves, and all of those are unlikely to challenge for the title next year. So he's probably done the right thing just for continuity and knowing that he can beat Tsunoda. Although you could argue if he went to a new team and then beat, say, a Norris or an Ocon or someone like that, that would, improve his stock. So I think he's doing the right thing. Well, he's got to consider 2024 already and think about what he's got to do, because he can't stay at AlphaTauri for the rest of his F1 career. Well, he could, but if he wants to win races and get podiums, then he shouldn't. So it's probably the right thing to do for him, and it's good for AlphaTauri, I think, as well.
Do you concur, Adam?
Yeah, it's quite a difficult one. I mean, he's got more years on the grid and all of that, but I don't know. I kind of agree with Nigel. At the moment, there's just not kind of much scope for growth. I think they've maybe been a bit, or the Gasly AlphaTauri package has probably had its most disappointing year. I'm not saying he's been a bad driver, but I think he hasn't quite hit the heights of the years at the team. So yeah, it's a very middling thing. I think it just smacks of kind of waiting for something else to come along. Maybe some of those drivers that you listed moving on, and I think the only other option he would have had is, so I know Bottas's situation was different, but where he went to a team kind of at the back of the grid, but with the hope that with some backing and potential they can move up the grid. But in terms of where the teams that are available right now, then I think it's the best best option. I don't think it will be, I think he'll hope that there are some better options coming up down the road.
Yeah, it seems to be all the moves that could be there are just sort of rumored by people, and on top of that are all sideways moves anyway. Like Aston Martin, they seem to be very open about wanting to keep Vettel at the moment, and I don't see any reason to get rid of Alonso. He's still performing magnificently at Alpine. So those are the only teams really that you could potentially have seen a gap if you were thinking about this in January, and there isn't really one. So I do think it's kind of just a contract by circumstance. I think Helmut Marko was saying he's contracted officially to the mothership of Red Bull. There's my dog, which you can tell because I'm at home now, not in Sheffield. He's contracted to the mothership of Red Bull until 2023 anyway. So he really needs to start thinking now for 2024. Would you say?
Yeah, definitely. I think he's got to hope. His best bet is if one of these midfield teams that we mentioned, McLaren, Alpine, Aston Martin, if they start, really getting onto the tails of Red Bull and Ferrari, that is his best hope, and then jumping ship to one of them at the right time. Because other than that, I think there's other drivers, who have a better reputation or who have a bit more value in the stock market who are ahead of him. And Gasly, as much as how amazing his last year was, he's arguably top 5, top 6 driver last year. People have forgotten that already because this year he's not quite, beaten Tsunoda as well. I guess maybe that's because Tsunoda's been driving better, which I think is the case. So he's got to set himself up for a McLaren or Alpine move and hope that they can become a top team. I think that's his best bet.
I mean, I would say, like, if any of the really top teams, looking, I can't really see how a seat will open up there, but stranger things have happened in F1. And if there is, a seat comes up, say Hamilton retires or something like that. And I really think for those top 3 teams, he's one of the best options on the market right now. I think if you looking to bring someone in, maybe outside of Norris, he's the driver that would be top of that list for me in terms of, if a top tier seat comes in, he'd be there for me.
Yeah, I get what you're saying on that. I think there's a lot of kind of drivers in that boat who are kind of in a line. I think you've got Norris, and then to be honest, I think you've then got Gasly, Albon, kind of really actually the ones that I can imagine being touted by a top team. But I would expect Gasly to only really be able to sort of maybe have a conversation with McLaren that could go somewhere.
Yeah,
that's the only place I can really think, because Ricciardo, he does look set to be going into 2023 with McLaren. He's been doing pretty well recently on his contract, but I mean, I wouldn't be surprised if there's been too many sort of just letdowns on that side, that it's just, okay, well, we'll see out the contract. And obviously there's a test with Colton Herta coming up later this year, and he will be doing a few FP1s for the team, but whether that goes anywhere, we don't know. And it's a bold one to go for McLaren, but if you look at their plan for the next couple of years, I'd imagine you look at it and just think, well, he just needs to get started on that now, and it's just complicated, to be honest. I
think there are already starting to be similarities. I know it's still relatively early in his career, but similarities to Perez's career, in that he's in that mold where, last season we're saying he's a top 5, top 6 driver, but he's not even really, in a top 6 team, or kind of on the very edge of it, in terms of construction, he's not anywhere near that with the car under him. And, again, having that shot at a team early in his career that didn't go to plan, I think already there are parallels that you can see with it. And we know how long it took Checo to get that second big break at a top team. And, it's, if you're looking at Gasly, I think you'd be looking at that thinking, like you said, Freddie, let's get something moving a bit quicker here.
Do you think Red Bull would take him back, Nigel?
I don't think Red Bull would. No. And that's the only thing, isn't it? Is he still feeling the kind of effects from that Red Bull, 6-month onslaught? Like, is that still a factor, for Mercedes or Ferrari or whoever?
Yeah, I think that's probably the case, to be honest, because I think you would have probably looked at Ricciardo a few years ago and gone, well, excellent. And now he's just not a conversation at all because, yes, he's performing against Norris for the most part now. Norris has still got the handle on him. But that just completely has just wiped him off the seat of the earth for any sort of serious discussions, similar to Vettel. So I think, memories are short in Formula One, but they can also be very long if you did a bad thing, let's be honest. Yeah. And I think Perez has proved that Gasly should be given a second chance, but I think he was the sort of in the worst position of the three, the sort of Gasly, Albon, Perez quandary at Red Bull, which has kind of been resolved. So yeah, that's the situation really. I don't really know what I see for Gasly apart from career midfielder and maybe having a sort of peter out like a Hulkenberg, to be honest, in my opinion.
I think I would say from Red Bull angle, there's not much pressure coming up from below. It really, we all know what's happened with Vips, and De Ruyter's in his third season of F2 and he's doing all right, but he had 3 seasons in F3 or European F3 before that. So, he's in a show position where he really should be doing well now. And outside of that, Hauger's not kicked on from where he would have wanted to be. So, it is.
Hauger's the best bet, in my opinion. If we're looking at that, I'd say Hauger's the best bet in terms of because he's in his debut year in F2 and he's performing as well as, in my opinion, Lawson, De Ruyter, and Iwasa. Ayumi Iwasa is at Damned. And I would put money on Hauger being the next graduate, but you're right, there isn't the gap.
But I mean, I think you're probably right in terms of he's the best bet, but I don't think that's an ideal situation. I think you want to be in a better position than that, really. And he may well be the next graduate, but I think in terms of where Red Bull would want to be, they want the next Leclerc coming through or the next Russell coming through, and they've not. I don't see that in their academy at the moment, and that's part of the reason. As much as I don't think for Gasly, even though he'll have career ambitions to be going higher, I think there's not a lot of worry at the moment because he's got. I think he's still got another at least season before he needs to be worrying about his AlphaTauri seat. I really think he's settled there.
All it takes, though, is next year 2 or 3 young drivers, not just from the Red Bull driver academy, but from the F2 grid, who are like Leclerc or Verstappen or someone like that, and they join F1, and then they're said to be the next big superstar, and then they'll straight away go ahead of Gasly in the kind of list.
Yeah,
that is the only thing. But right now, yeah, you're probably right. He is behind Norris in the next kind of level. Because there is no young superstar out there in the sports series who is looking like an F1 world champion. So he does have that on his side right now, but in 12 months that could change. So
yeah, because it feels like Piastri is covered. There are a few rumours in Montreal that he's going to be announced 2023 with Williams in place of Nicholas Latifi this weekend at Silverstone. I mean, obviously that's a watch this space kind of scenario, and obviously Latifi's brought a lot to that team, so they might give a bit more grace to an exit of Latifi from Williams. But other than Piastri, it is very much a kind of pick and choose your driver from Formula 2 out of a hat, to be honest.
Has there been any links with Djokovic? Because I think he's been performing. Obviously, he's leading the champions this year, but I don't think that's a massive surprise. He's shown pace all the way through his F2 career, and I don't think I've ever heard of particular links or.
There aren't any. He's got no F1 team affiliation.
Yeah.
I wouldn't be surprised if something comes towards him around the summer break. There's usually a test around Hungary kind of time, so I wouldn't be surprised if he popped in at maybe AlphaTauri or somewhere like that around then. But it's also a kind of a hard one to call. It depends how you rate Djokovic, to be honest. A third season F2 driver who did well at MP, did very badly at UNI Virtuosi, and now is doing well at MP again. It's kind of like he's never been a stellar guy, but his reputation, I think, is quite high at the moment. I think he's no worse than a Teo Porcher in that series, to be honest, in my opinion. and Teo Jed lauded like he's the best thing since sliced bread, which in my opinion he isn't. But anyway, you look at that and think, okay, well, not bad at all. So I don't know, at risk of this becoming an academy
No
podcast.
comment.
No comment from Nigel, who seems to rate every ART driver as the best thing. But anyway, I don't know. I think there's the tide is turning, and we've said this a couple of times from the Red Bull Academy. I think it's the Alpine Academy. There's a reason. Jack Doohan, I was going to say Mick Doohan there. He's a bike champion. He's a very different character. Who's his dad? He moved out of choice to the Alpine Academy from Red Bull. So who knows where that's going to leave everything. But we're thinking a couple of seasons into the future with this conversation now.
Happy for Gasly.
Gasly. Anyway, I think
a full-on silly season thing in August, I reckon.
Yeah, we probably will. There'll be a few things that will be opening up as discussion points. For instance, Nick de Vries probably, I reckon, is going to be thrown into a few conversations without his control, to be honest. But anyway, moving on to another debate that we're going to have, which probably will just be us agreeing with things as well, in a way that Formula One team bosses can't. Hey,
they drive cars.
Yes, porpoising, whatever's going on with that in Formula One at the moment. Obviously, there was a technical directive brought in Montreal regarding how much a car could vertically move up and down. Still obviously allowed to bounce, but it can only bounce at a certain amount. Nothing was laid in stone. In Montreal, they asked teams to kind of measure how much their vertical movement was, and then they were going to bring in a few kind of touch points in a way. It's okay, well, you can't move up this much because you're going to knacker your driver's back, and that could cause severe vertebrae damage and nerve damage and stuff for years. And like 20 years ago, everyone who finished Formula One walked with a limp and is a bit deaf. Nowadays, you kind of don't want that. So there's been a few discussions between Formula One team personnel, and they can't agree on anything, believe it or not, because obviously it becomes a competitive discussion, which is fair enough. But where do you guys stand on this technical directive and where it seems to be going? Nigel, do you want to jump in on your opinion first?
I think the FIA are pretty much doing the right thing. I think they should set a certain limit, find out what this limit is, and if your car is over this limit, you should be forced to raise your ride height, because then it will stop or lessen the porpoising, I think. And then in that case, it helps the driver's safety for those who are bouncing more because the car height is raised. And those like Red Bull or Alpine who are not suffering the bouncing as much shouldn't have to their car because their car is fine. So then their competitive, I guess, advantage from it remains, which should be the case because they've done a better job because they saw it coming, whereas Mercedes and other teams didn't see it coming. And I don't think there should be disadvantage from that at all. So I think the FIA are going in the right direction with it. I wouldn't like to see a massive kind of suspension or floor regulation change, especially if it's mid-season. I would absolutely be totally against that. Maybe next season, but I think they're doing the right thing with it. I don't think there should be any major kind of changes. I just think there should be some kind of regulation to say, if you're going over us, if you're bouncing too much, raise your car. That's it.
Do you think it can just be solved by raising the car?
Yes, because I think Baku was the outlier. If you look at all the 9 races so far, all the drivers complaining, it was mostly in Baku. Before Baku, it was just a handful of drivers. Canada, I don't think we barely heard the drivers complaining. So for me, Baku is the outlier.
Canada, we heard drivers praising the decision. Majority, pretty well. I think you're basically safe to say probably about 17 or 18 out of 20 were basically praising the TD, and that's pretty impressive as a move. I think I agree with you, Nigel, that I think it's the right kind of call and it does protect it. I think in terms of solving the issue, it depends how you mean solving the issue, because it creates issues in itself, which is the whole debate. but it solves the issue in terms of drivers being buffeted around their own cockpits with tight seatbelts, keeping them slapping into the
But
the seat, basically.
on that point, though, we see the teams, compromising between reliability and speed. Like, say if the weather gets hot and with cooling and stuff like that, we see the teams making that compromise. Why can't they make that compromise between the driver's safety and performance? It surely should be the same kind of thing.
It
So
shouldn't be a compromise.
That
shouldn't be a compromise. Driver safety should come first, in my opinion. I think if you start thinking about a compromise of safety, that's when it becomes ridiculous. Like if teams are allowed to be doing what they're doing, they would put a fuel tank around the driver, have the driver at the front with their legs in the crumple zone like they had in the 80s. And that's why that was all moved, because it's like you need to save the teams from themselves 40 years ago in terms of the way the drivers were to save the drivers. That worked. And the amount, if you're a lot, what was it Toto Wolff said about the Halo? He wanted to take a saw to it because he didn't like how it looked. Well, screw that. The Halo is a fantastic piece of safety innovation. So I think when you think about it, it's not safety in terms of like ripping someone's head off if they go into a tire barrier, a risk of being too graphic, but it's still, in terms of long-term damage, I think it's the kind of thing where you can't even question, in my opinion, compromise. You've got to kind of just put this at the front.
Yeah, but if you're asking, why haven't teams been doing that already? I think we all know the answer. It's because, for something like this, where it's not, as you said, it's not kind of an immediate, risk of, in an incident, it's just kind of a build up of things. They're always going to push the limit as far as possible. And that's why technical directive has had to come in, because, teams and drivers will push themselves as far as they physically can to get that advantage. And, I hope it works, but it is. I don't think and I don't think F1 think this, but it's not something where this directive comes in, and if they're talking about rating the right height, then that's got to be still watch this space. It's come back to it in a few races, see if it's working, see if it's had the impact, because it's not, teams didn't kind of see this coming as much as it did, and there's always, with technical changes to the car and raising the right height like that, then you need to be looking at the impact over several races and then evaluating whether that has been successful.
So even though you're saying watch this space, where do you think this is going to go then?
I hope it will solve it. I'm not kind of technical enough to see the kind of unforeseen I guess circumstances or problems that will arise from, but I just think people who are smarter than me should be looking.
I think what they introduced in Canada will remain, and I think that has so far been enough to not have the levels of porpoising that we've seen earlier in the season. That's why I don't really get what Toto Wolff is arguing, because we've heard about heated debates with Horner, Wolff, and Bonotto. I don't understand what more he wants, because for me, Mercedes and Baku, now this is my opinion, I think they ran the car as low as possible to not only for performance, but to try and make a point to make changes happen. That's why Hamilton was so fatigued after the race and stuff. I genuinely think they did it intentionally to try and make a point, and I don't think that's right from them, quite frankly, to put a driver's health and safety at risk. Mercedes, the team, I think that's completely out of order.
Yeah. I think
that's my opinion, of course.
I think we all stand in the same position with that. I think it's going to be it's going to definitely play out politically over Silverstone. I think it's going to be an interesting one to see how that comes into play. Silverstone's a weird track surface. It was very bumpy at points, and now I think it's quite smooth because they sued the people who made it bumpy and won a whole lot of money a few years ago. And it'll be an interesting track to see how this plays out on. We did say after Spain, well, around then, that we think this could be a track that MERC could do all right at after they were all right in Spain. We're just going to touch on it for kind of a couple of sentences, really, because we're doing this as a short podcast. But Lewis Hamilton, is he going to win? Is he going to be in the fight for the win this year? He's won all but 2 of the races in Silverstone since 2014, not the 70th anniversary or the 2018 Grand Prix. Do we think he's got a chance in hell? Just give me a yes, Nigel, or a no.
This year or this weekend?
0 chance.
I said this year or this weekend.
Oh, this weekend.
Oh, this weekend, no.
This
I
year?
agree.
This year, yes.
Okay, Adam.
I think for this weekend, what we saw in Canada from Mercedes is the ceiling. I think that's the absolute upper limit of what they can do, and they'll need kind of fortune to go with that, as well as the car performing to their kind of best expectations. This year, yeah, I think there's always a chance, and I'd back him to take it. And I still, it's a long season. It really is. So I think there's. Yeah, I think there's a decent chance over the season, but this weekend I do not see it at all. It would have to be a crazy race.
I can kind of see it this weekend based on stuff I said about a month ago, that I'm thinking this track could actually be okay for MERC and better than others just across the year anyway, because of the sort of medium to high speed corners. But I'd be inclined to agree no other than that, really, pretty much the whole year. I think this would be a best chance, but it still would be slim, in my opinion. But yes, so talking of Silverstone, Formula One returns home, you could say, to Britain, to a track I think we all really enjoy. And what are you expecting then? Are you expecting more of the same? Are you expecting Ferrari? Are you expecting Red Bull? I mean, we don't know anything based on ride heights, but Adam, where do you want to throw your weight behind in terms of support?
I really hope Ferrari can do well. I don't know. I want them to be able to make a fight of it, and it's going to. I think if they can get the car to the finish, I think they'll have a decent chance. I think having taking the new engine last time out, they're not. Hopefully, won't be dealing with issues with that, and I'd hope they'd be able to challenge and make something of it. But because Red Bull have looked so clean as an operation, and I don't know, it's kind of difficult based off what we've seen over the last few races. They seem to be be able to deal with most of what's thrown at them. But yeah, I'm kind of partisanly backing Ferrari.
I think I am as well. I think Leclerc can definitely position. I mean, he's the best qualifier out there. It's just whether the race pace from Canada from Ferrari, whether that translates into Silverstone. And if it does, then Finn has got a fantastic chance. He could do something similar to what he did in Spain before he broke down. He built a lead of 10 guests for Verstappen Sport then. But we'll see something similar. But a champion kind of need a Ferrari domination, but Ferrari to do something really impressive and win kind of. But I think Verstappen and Red Bull will be, I think every single race this year they're going to be in the fight for it. So that's going to be a bit of a headache for Ferrari.
Yeah, it's an annoying one because it's historically, recent history, been a very good track for Max and Charles. Obviously, Leclerc probably had his best drive in my opinion, of 2021 at Silverstone, and probably one of his best drives of 2020 at Silverstone. And they both had a mega scrap. What are some of the best racing you will ever see between two drivers in 2019 that was just allowed just to be them throwing.
Did you like that battle? I thought you didn't really rate that battle much. I've never really talked about it much.
I rate the battle.
On this century.
I mean, how they weren't knocked out by each other's kitchen sinks is beyond me. But, I butchered that metaphor, but anyway, I think it could be a nice slog between the two of them, and that's kind of what I'm hoping for. I always get excited for this race anyway because it's the British Grand Prix, but I think we could have an all right race because Silverstone, and I think any outliers you think are going to pop up? Do you think Alpine could be doing another blinder this weekend where they then just end up in 9th?
I think with Alpine, I don't know how much of a blinder it would be. I think they're kind of just sneaky quite good. And obviously they've got the straight line pace. And, I wouldn't be, I don't know kind of when when I don't know how surprised I'd be with it, but yeah, outside of that, I'm not sure. I'll let Nigel answer that.
I think this track is similar to Barcelona in get 2x2 or near 2x2 grid, and it's kind of in pace order, so too many surprises. But the racing will be fantastic because you can race it. There's long straight, high speed corners. So I think with this year's cars, it is, just as thrilling as some of the recent silver races that we've seen.
Yeah, I think these new cars are going to be pretty exciting here. I completely agree. But anyway, yes, we've got a week until Silverstone. As Adam said, press conferences on a Thursday, so you'll get some quotes early. And we'll be back after the race to discuss it, to say how probably boring it was or something like that after we've said it's going to be good. But anyway, have a good week, guys. Enjoy the Grand Prix, and we'll see you soon.
Goodbye.